Hi, this is Carol Watson, and welcome to a new episode of Thrive Talk. And for those of you that have not been to a Thrive Talk before, it's a great time to take a good 20 minutes and get some new information and inspiration from great thought leaders from around the world. We're very excited today to have as our guest Jimmy, Jimmy Nguyen. And please forgive me if I'm pronouncing that name incorrectly. I hope I get it right. But welcome, Jimmy, to a Thrive Talk.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol, and I'll give you a quick tip on an easy way to pronounce it, at least in American English. It's Jimmy Nguyen, which is also kind of my personal brand that we're going to talk about today, spelled like the word win, W-I-N.
That makes it easy. That seems very easily Americanized, so I appreciate that.
Well, it's the Vietnamese Smith. Practically half the Vietnamese population is last name Nguyen, so it became a easy and convenient way to help people pronounce the name, and also, it became part of my personal brand.
That's a great way to get us kick-started. So we want people to ask questions. You'll have over the next week to get your questions in, and Jimmy will be gracious enough to get them in to respond to them and give you some resources. But to get us started, Jimmy, can you tell us a little bit about what your current role is? I know you have a number of different buckets and jobs, but tell me what you're focused on now in terms of your day job.
Sure. By day, I am a lawyer. I'm a partner in a major corporate law firm. The firm's named Davis Wright Tremaine. It's one of the large corporate firms in America. I have been practicing law. This is my 20th year, if you can believe it. I'm just starting in law. And I focus what I call on all things digital. I'm rare in the legal world that I call myself the 360-degree lawyer, because I do transactional work, counseling, and litigation, which is where I started. And it covers a range of intellectual property issues, advertising and marketing, media, technology, privacy issues, but all tied to businesses that are operating on the internet, on social media, on mobile. So my brand and what I do for a living is help companies operate in digital environments.
That's amazing. And it's really important. So we want to talk about being really a rainmaker and standing out. And I know that you are a huge advocate of being a man that is a unicorn in this business, an Asian gay attorney in the digital space. Can you tell us about what that experience is like for you? And then we can talk a little bit about the digital industry.
Sure. I came out of law school in 1995, and at the time, and it's still true in corporate law America, I think it's true of a lot of American corporate environments, it's still a predominantly straight white male world at the upper echelons. So just like most CEOs of large companies tend to be straight white men, so too are most partners in major law firms and leaders of major law firms. So when I came out of law, there were racial minority attorneys, there were LGBT attorneys, but they tended to sort of cap out at certain levels in law, and not at the very top. You didn't see them as much as you see today. And so because of that, when I was coming out, I really had a question of who was I going to be in the legal environment? Would I be successful reaching the highest levels of a corporate law firm? From an Asian perspective, that was easier to answer because there wasn't a choice. People look at you and say, well, it's clear, I'm Asian. They look at you, Carol, and say, it's clear you're African American. As a gay attorney, you have a different choice, which is how out am I going to be in the workplace? And early on, I think I spent too much of my life trying to fit in to the environment I was in, and then finally I realized, probably about 5 or 6 years into my legal career, that I gained a lot more authenticity and power in developing relationships and potential business if I was just really myself and stood out as who I was. I'm an openly gay Asian American man who was an immigrant to the United States. So instead of trying to fit into the law firm environment, which can be very corporate in nature, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to be who I am, unapologetically, but at the same time deliver excellent client service and be a great representative for my clients and see where that takes me.
Absolutely fabulous. So everyone has a story that is a trigger that led to the realization of who they are and who they want to be. Was there any turning point or any trigger for you that made you realize that what you were doing wasn't working, or in how people responded to you?
Not particularly. I think what happened for me is when you first get into any service profession, whether it's law, accounting, I'm sure in advertising and media it's the same, you focus first on just learning to be a good professional, right, in whatever that skill set is. So for me it was, all right, I got out of law school, I needed to learn to be a good lawyer. And I didn't really think about what role my identity played in anything, because I think a lot of us, particularly if you're racial minorities, we like to think that it shouldn't matter, right? It should not matter. As long as I'm a good lawyer or a good accountant or whatever, I will be successful. And then about 6 or 7 years into my legal career, that's about the point in time when major law firms start evaluating their associates to determine whether or not someone might make partner in the firm. It's usually about an 8 to 10-year track. And one of the criteria that's really evaluated is this young lawyer someone who's either already demonstrated the ability to generate business or has the capacity to generate business? Because at the end of the day, law is also business. We have to bring in clients, dollars, and money. Do they have a specialty or a skill that is going to be in demand from the client community? And so that's the point I started thinking about, well, what do I have that is unique to offer, both as a lawyer and as a person? And it's that point, it was probably about 6 or 7 years, that I started thinking, you know what, I'm gay, I'm Asian. Instead of trying to ignore that fact, not just accept the fact, but use it as part of my brand, my marketing to the client community. So I started finding diversity organizations that were supportive of racial minority and LGBT lawyers. It allowed me to network with clients who were themselves either racial minority or openly LGBT, or more importantly, people who were supportive. And that's a key lesson I kind of want to leave to people, which is, I think so many times when people talk about diversity in business development, they think you have to get business from someone who looks like you. You have to get support from someone who looks like you. And I found that by networking in those circles, I found people who were supportive of my career opportunities, even if they weren't Asian, even if they weren't, LGBT. And so it was the specific moment for me was more about realizing, oh, I have to demonstrate I have the capacity to generate business. How am I going to do that? That led me to realize, instead of shying away from who I am, let's use it to my advantage.
So tell me more about your philosophy around being a rainmaker. How do you, what skills have you learned? What steps have you found to be, that you've made your own to be a great rainmaker?
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, to be honest. But first, you have to think about, what do I have to offer in terms of a service or specialty that the client community that I'm trying to target wants. That's true of any service profession, right? So you have to be good at something. For me, I decided in the early 1990s, when the internet boom was happening, to plant my flag in the world of digital and new media, which was emerging. Because in Los Angeles, there are a ton of entertainment lawyers. There are a ton of lawyers who work for companies on intellectual property matters. So I was thinking, well, how am I going to be unique? So one way I decided to stand out is to say, I'm going to be the young, hip, techie lawyer who understands digital technology and can help companies with all the legal issues they face when they're operating online. Now, social and mobile media, which did not exist back then. So that was my first step to rainmaking, was deciding what's my calling card that is unique, so that people would think, I have this problem. I need to call Jimmy Nguyen as opposed to one of the 500 or 1,000 other lawyers in town. So that was a specific decision on my part to stand out, and it was a growing area, as we all see now. It's the dominant sort of discussion in the media world, what to do in digital. Secondly, that was about how I branded myself as a lawyer. Then I thought about, how do I stand out as a person? Because law, like a lot of businesses, is a relationship business. People hire lawyers because they have a relationship with them, they trust that person, they think the person will do a good job. And so I started trying to develop relationships in the diversity legal community, as well as with a lot of women clients. A lot of my clients tend to be women, and I think it's a little cliche, but it's true. Women and gay men love each other. We have an affinity for each other because I love strong women, and I think when women rise to positions of the ability to hire, they'll sometimes look at someone like me. And so I started telling my story more. I think when I was younger, I didn't talk about being gay as openly. I didn't talk about being an immigrant as openly. I didn't talk about my experiences growing up feeling out of place as a racial minority. And I found that as the more I talked about it with clients and potential clients, the more they reacted back to me with their own personal stories. And what I learned is instead of just trying to talk shop with clients, if I actually established more of a personal connection with people, they reacted well, they learned more about me, they shared more about themselves, and while that doesn't have to do with business, it created the strength of personal relationship that would lead that client to pick up the phone and call me later and say, you know what, I have something I need you to do. Would you take care of this for me? I would like to hire you to handle this lawsuit. I'd like to hire you to handle this particular transaction. So it was forming that personal relationship, which became stronger because I spoke about who I was, rather than avoiding it and trying to pretend like I was everyone else.
So without divulging, of course, any client secrets, can you give us an example of what you reflect on when you think about that shift and those successes, client successes that you can share?
Sure. No, yeah, a lot of my clients are public. They're, not. We do a lot of things that are public for them. So I represent a range of companies, from entertainment and media companies such as movie studios like Sony Pictures Entertainment. I do some work for Warner Brothers, the Motion Picture Association of America. We represent television networks, publishing companies such as, magazine publishing companies such as Bauer Publishing. I represent technology companies such as Microsoft and Amazon, emerging companies such as, for example, Uber, is a client I do work for. I work for Fandango, and consumer products companies such as Mattel, Kia Motors America, the company that used to be Del Monte Foods is now called Big Heart Pet Brands, so focusing on pet food, and retail companies such as Hot Topic and J. Crew. So my client base spans a whole range of different kinds of companies, but they're all companies that have a need in digital media these days. And that was one of the ways I was able to gain entry to working with them, because they already have lots of established relationships. But when they had something in digital and new media, they had fewer lawyer relationships already set up for that area, and so it was a way in, something new that other people weren't doing that I did. And it's led to some fun opportunities. For example, I represent the Miss Universe organization, and it led me to work on some really interesting, fun matters related to the beauty pageant world, and get to be a preliminary judge at several Miss Universe pageants now.
Fabulous. So tell us about any trends that you're seeing. What are some of the things that are a major conversation with clients nowadays? What are they concerned about?
Sure. A lot of it's digital, digital, digital. So things that I hear a lot from the client community are privacy of data. How do we collect consumer data, use it to market, but at the same time respect consumer privacy? That's a huge issue. Another big issue is how do companies use social media to market and promote their products and services while complying with a whole range of laws. Same thing with mobile marketing. A lot of companies want to hear about that. There's a big talk about branded entertainment and sponsored content, both in video content that you see, for example, on a web series, as well as in print content, as the print industry is finding new ways to make money, particularly, for example, the magazine world. They have to find, well, where's the dollars coming from? And so there's talk about doing more sponsored, for example, publication content, and how do you disclose that to the consuming public in a way that makes it clear, hey, we got paid to do this, essentially. So all of those issues often lead to disputes, lawsuits, and so those are the kinds of things we hear a lot about. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about intellectual property, because that's where I started really as a lawyer. And today, with the internet and mobile media, there's a lot of opportunities for other people to infringe the intellectual property rights of major content owners. And so we get a lot of calls talking about how do we enforce our copyrights and trademarks and other assets when it's so easy to copy them on the internet world.
It's all keeping you really busy.
Yeah.
So my next question is really around what resources, what organizations, what's your routine that you can't live without that you feel has attributed to your success as a business developing expert?
I think for a long period of time, I went with what my strength is, and which is public speaking. I was a competitive speaker and debater all through high school and college. I used to coach a college speech team, so it's one of my unique talents. So for a long time, I did a lot of speaking engagements, and I decided to be known for that. So I spoke at a lot of legal events and industry events about legal topics because it was a way to get known. People cannot hire you and send you business unless they know who you are. And so that you have to find a way to make that happen. I know I'm a good public speaker. I like to be entertaining. I like to be dynamic. I also like to give very practical advice. So a lot of lawyers, honestly, aren't like that when they do public speaking, which is a surprise, I think, to the public audience. They think lawyers are good speakers. So I went on a period of time where for many years I did 15, 20 speaking engagements a year across the country. And it really helped me to develop my reputation, my profile as an expert in certain areas. I would very carefully pick the topics I would do to say, this is a topic I want clients to call me about and I want to be known for. And I would start every speech or presentation with something entertaining or dynamic because that is the personal brand I wanted to demonstrate to people. This is the guy who's interesting, dynamic, fun, but at the same time also specific and practical in the advice that I can give. So for me, that's what I did.
So what was your favorite topic before you kind of, give us a little bit more? I'm curious about what your favorite topic is, and give us at least one tip that was popular that we should know.
Well, I certainly did a lot of substantive legal topics. So I spent a lot of time talking about, for example, the emerging world of online gaming that's happening all around the globe, particularly with internet gambling, and it's now coming to the United States. But in terms of actual tips, I think from a career development perspective, I also did a lot of motivational speaking as well. And my biggest tip I would give people is to find a way to be distinctive, because people need to remember you. If in a world full of many professionals delivering the same service or companies delivering the same product, what are you going to do that's unique? And how are you going to stand out? That's always my tip to people. But it's got to be something authentic. Don't be fake, right? People respond to truth. So don't try to be like someone else just to fake it. You need to be you, but find what is unique and special about you and use that to your advantage. Because, for example, when you talk to a client, one of my unique things that I didn't spend my younger years talking about is the fact that I was born in Vietnam. My family were immigrants to the United States. They left the night before Saigon fell in April 1975. My father was a judge in South Vietnam. It's one of the reasons my family had to leave. I didn't talk about that when I was younger. Now when I talk about it in public environments and speeches, it is the one thing people react to because it's a dramatic story. It's my life story, so it seems just natural to me. But it helps to communicate something about me, where I came from, the fact that I come from a family of people who worked really hard to make it in the United States, that in some ways, my life has been the personification of the American dream that my parents wanted for their children. And I think that informed a lot of people about who I was as a person and why they might want to hire me as their lawyer.
Fabulous. So we're kind of winding down. I want to hear about some of your other pet projects and how they inform your work or you as a person.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of work in a lot of different areas. So I have my own website and sort of social media brand called Jimmy Nguyen, Jimmy, and the word win, W-I-N. So there's a website at jimmynguyen.com where I write about diversity issues and innovation. I help produce a touring project that is a theater project based on the It Gets Better campaign to stop bullying of LGBT youth, taking what was an internet phenomenon and putting it on stage as a theatrical work that was written and directed by a good friend of mine. I helped produce it. It's starting to tour again around the country in its sort of second year of touring. And that's an interesting story of how that can relate to professional development. So I invited a number of clients of mine to the Los Angeles premiere of that show. Of course, the show has nothing to do with law, but by bringing my clients and friends who I knew would be supportive of LGBT issues to this event, they got to see, here's something I did that was a passion project for me, that helped LGBT youth around the country. And that allowed me to really develop some stronger personal connection with some clients, and allows them to see you in a different way, and it allows you to see me as a person who was trying to help other people, not just help myself. And that's a big lesson I would give to anyone in a service profession. Sometimes the client community feels like they have dollar signs on their forehead and people are targeting them because they just want their business and dollars. But if you start treating people like people, and allowing them to see what's important to you and forming that relationship, I think it really strengthened a lot of client relationships. Can I point to the exact number of dollars I have received in business as a result of that? No, but I think it contributes to my overall brand as being someone who is an advocate for LGBT issues, for diversity issues, and there is a portion of the client community that reacts really strongly to that, and will look for opportunities to send me business because they like me in part because of that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jimmy. It was great talking to you. Any parting words? We always ask our guests what they use to thrive. Do you have any?
Sure. I use to thrive fitness. I'm a big fitness freak, so I work out regularly. It allows me to free my brain, get the endorphins running, and it allows me to reset my brain in a life where my brain is going, a million miles a minute. So I think that's really important, to get out and be fit.
Your favorite sound you listen to when you're working out?
I'm sorry?
What's your favorite song to listen to when you're working out?
Well, I must confess to be a big fan of teen girl pop. So it's like I'm basically like a teenage girl trapped in, a 42-year-old Asian man's body. So, Katy Perry, Firework. Katy Perry, Firework dance remix. Inspire me. I loved her at the Super Bowl, zipping through the air with a star behind her. It was great. But, it's inspirational. It's very much, I think, reflective of who I am as a person, and I always tell people to do things that reflect who you are. I also really love travel. I travel a lot for business, but I also try to tack on time places when I can, because I love the experience of learning new things, and that really broadens your horizons and exposes you to new great adventures. So fitness and travel.
Real quickly, favorite place to travel real quickly before we end?
My favorite place in the world, Mykonos, Greek island.
Beautiful. Haven't been there yet. Well, thank you, Jimmy. We really appreciate you taking the time to be a Thrive Talk guest. And for those who do have questions for Jimmy, please put them in the chat box, and we'll make sure that Jimmy gets you some responses. If there are any resources or tools or things that we should be aware of, Jimmy, please let us know in the chat box as well on Thrive Talk. And please join us next week for another guest on Thrive Talk. Enjoy your day, everyone.